The crystal champagne flute trembled in my hand as I stared at the elaborate place settings around our family's mahogany dining table. Tonight wasn't just another lavish dinner party. It was my execution. I'm Pearl, and at 29, I was about to disappoint my family in the worst possible way. Leonard is a catch, darling, my mother whispered urgently, adjusting my designer dress sleeve. He's offering stability, connections, everything we've worked for. Don't mess this up. The man in question sat across from me, his expensive watch glinting as he raised his glass. At 58, Leonard was successful, wealthy, and completely wrong for me. But that didn't matter to my family. All they saw were dollar signs and social climbing opportunities. To new beginnings, Leonard announced, his practiced smile never reaching his eyes. Everyone clinked glasses while I fought the urge to bolt from the room. My younger brother Levi caught my eye from across the table, his expression sympathetic. He knew what was coming. We'd talked about it last week when I'd finally broken down and told him about Daniel. Pearl has been reviewing the merger proposal, my mother announced proudly. Haven't you, dear? I set down my glass. Actually, I need to say something. The room fell silent. Even the servants stopped their quiet movements around the table. I'm not going to marry Leonard, I said firmly. I'm seeing someone else, someone I actually love. My mother's face turned white. What did you just say? His name is Daniel. He's an inventor working on sustainable technology solutions. We've been dating for 6 months. Leonard's smile vanished. Vanessa, I thought this was settled. It is settled, my mother snapped. Pearl is just having a moment of cold feet. Aren't you, darling? No, Mother, I'm not having cold feet. I'm making a choice. My choice. My father slammed his hand on the table, making the silverware jump. Do you have any idea what you're throwing away? Leonard's company could secure our family's future for generations. I don't care about his company, I shot back. I care about living my own life, not the one you've scripted for me. That inventor of yours, my mother sneered. What can he offer? A cramped apartment and dreams? He offers me respect, love, the chance to build something meaningful together. Levi spoke up quietly. Maybe we should listen to what Pearl wants. Stay out of this, our mother barked. Leonard stood, straightening his tie. I think I should leave. Clearly there's been a misunderstanding. Leonard, please, my mother begged. She doesn't mean it. I do mean it, I insisted. I'm sorry if this embarrasses you, but I won't marry someone I don't love. My father's voice turned deadly quiet. Then you leave us no choice. Either you honor this arrangement, or you're no longer part of this family. The words hit like a physical blow, but I'd expected them. Still, hearing them out loud made my chest tight. You're choosing some penniless inventor over your family? My mother demanded. I stood slowly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. No, I'm choosing myself. If you walk out that door, my father warned, don't expect to come back. No more access to family funds, no connections, nothing. Levi half rose from his chair. Dad, this is crazy. Sit down, our father thundered. I looked around the table one last time, at the crystal, the silver, the artificial smiles and hollow promises. All of it suddenly seemed so meaningless. I'll have my things out by tomorrow, I said quietly. My mother's face crumpled. Pearl, please, think about what you're doing. I have thought about it. For the first time in my life, I'm thinking clearly. I walked to the door, my heels clicking on the marble floor. Behind me, I could hear my mother's soft sobs, Leonard's awkward attempts at comfort, my father's angry muttering. Just before I left, Levi caught up with me in the foyer. Pearl, wait. I turned, fighting back tears. Here, he pressed a small key into my hand. To my apartment, in case you need somewhere to stay. I hugged him fiercely. Thank you. They'll come around, he whispered. They have to. But we both knew that wasn't true. The Santiagos never came around. They only moved forward, crushing whatever stood in their way. As I stepped out into the cool night air, my phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. How did it go? I took one last look at the mansion behind me, at the life I was leaving behind. Then I typed back, "I'm free, coming to you now." My hands were steady as I got into my car. The trembling was gone, replaced by something stronger, certainty. I might have just lost my family, but I'd found myself. And that was worth more than all the arranged marriages and business mergers in the world. "You can't fit all these books in my spare room," Daniel laughed, watching me unpack my 10th box of architecture texts. "We'll need to get creative with storage." It had been 3 days since I'd walked out of my family's mansion. 3 days of ignored calls from my mother, stern emails from family lawyers, and a crushing silence from my father. "I can donate some," I offered, though the thought made my chest tight. These books represented years of study, dreams I wasn't ready to let go of yet. Daniel crossed the room and wrapped his arms around me from behind. "No way, we'll make space. Harrison's coming over later. He's great at solving puzzles like this." The mention of Daniel's older brother made me smile. Harrison had welcomed me without question, treating me like family from the moment we met. It was so different from what I'd grown up with. My phone buzzed, Ellie's face lighting up the screen. My best friend had been my rock through all of this. "Pearl, are you sitting down?" Her lawyer voice was in full effect. "What's wrong?" "They've frozen your accounts, all of them, even your personal savings." The room spun slightly. I gripped the edge of Daniel's desk. "They can't do that. That's my money. I earned it working at the firm." "Technically, the accounts were under your father's business umbrella. I'm looking for loopholes, but..." Daniel took one look at my face and guided me to sit on the bed. "What's happening?" "They're trying to starve me out," I whispered. "Make me come crawling back." "Like hell they are," he said firmly. "We'll figure this out." Ellie was still talking. "I've started the paperwork to establish your independent accounts, but Pearl, there's more. They're claiming you stole proprietary information before leaving." "What?" I shot to my feet. "I didn't take anything." "I know that, but they're building a case. They want to scare you." Daniel's face darkened. "This is harassment." "It's family," I corrected bitterly. "Santiago style." A knock at the door made us all jump. Harrison's voice called out, "Brought pizza and moving supplies." Daniel let him in while I finished my call with Ellie. Harrison took one look at my face and set down the pizza boxes. "Okay, what did they do now?" I explained the situation while Daniel paced the small apartment, his inventor's mind clearly working overtime. "They can't just take everything from you," Harrison said, his business acumen kicking in. "There have to be legal protections." "My family has very good lawyers," I said quietly, "and they're not above playing dirty." "Then we play smarter," Daniel suddenly announced. "Pearl, remember that sustainable housing project you showed me? The one your firm rejected?" I nodded. It had been my passion project, designs for affordable, eco-friendly homes that could revolutionize urban living. What if we built it? Not just one building, but a whole new company. Your designs, my solar technology. Harrison's eyes lit up. "You know, with the right investors, and that could work. The market's hungry for green innovation." "I don't have any startup capital," I reminded them. "They made sure of that." "But you have us," Daniel said firmly. "And I've been saving everything from my patent royalties." My phone buzzed again, a text from Levi. "Mum's on the warpath. Dad's talking about legal action. Be careful." Harrison read the message over my shoulder and snorted. "They're scared. You're the golden child who got away, and now they're throwing everything they have at breaking you." "I won't break," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice was. "I can't go back to being their puppet." Daniel pulled out his laptop. "Then let's build something they can't touch, something that's purely ours." For the next few hours, we spread papers across the floor, eating cold pizza while sketching out business plans. Harrison made calls to potential investors he knew. Daniel explained how his solar panel innovations could integrate with my housing designs. Around midnight, exhausted but hopeful, I stepped onto Daniel's small balcony for air. The city lights twinkled below, so different from the manicured view from my old bedroom. "Having second thoughts?" Daniel joined me, offering a cup of tea. "No," I said, realizing it was true. For the first time, I'm having first thoughts. My own thoughts. He smiled, that warm, genuine smile that had first drawn me to him. You know this won't be easy, right? We'll be starting from scratch. Good, I said firmly. Everything worthwhile I've ever had, I built myself. Why should this be different? My phone buzzed one last time. My mother. Don't throw away everything we've given you. Come home. We can fix this. I showed Daniel the message, then deleted it without responding. The old Pearl might have wavered, might have given in to keep the peace. But I wasn't that Pearl anymore. They'd tried to break me by taking everything away. Instead, they'd set me free. And I was going to build something so amazing they'd regret ever doubting me. Daniel squeezed my hand. Ready to change the world? I squeezed back. Ready to build our own? And these solar panels integrate directly into the building's facade. The investor leaned forward, studying our prototype designs. 6 months had passed since that night on Daniel's balcony, and we were finally getting traction. They're practically invisible, Daniel explained, pulling up the technical specifications. But they generate 40% more power than traditional panels, even in low-light conditions. I jumped in, pointing to my architectural renderings. The entire building works as a single ecosystem. Solar power, rainwater harvesting, vertical gardens. It's completely self-sustainable. The investor, Ms. Roberts, tapped her pen against her notepad. And you've tested this technology? We have a working prototype on our garage, Harrison chimed in. 3 months of data showing consistent results. The meeting room fell silent as Ms. Roberts reviewed our numbers. My heart pounded. This was our 5th investor pitch this month, and we desperately needed funding to scale up. It's ambitious, she finally said. Maybe too ambitious. My stomach dropped, but Daniel wasn't giving up. Come see it in action. We can demonstrate everything today. She checked her watch. I have another meeting in 2 hours. That's all we need, I promised. 20 minutes later, we were pulling up to our makeshift workshop, a converted garage Harrison had helped us lease. It wasn't much, but it was ours. Sorry about the mess, I apologized, leading Ms. Roberts past workbenches covered in blueprints and circuit boards. Mess means work gets done, she replied, surprising me with a smile. Show me what you've got. Daniel activated the prototype system, and the monitoring screens lit up. Watch this. For the next hour, we demonstrated every aspect of our integrated system. Ms. Roberts asked sharp questions, tested scenarios, and took detailed notes. The market potential is enormous, Harrison explained, while Daniel showed her the power generation data, especially with new environmental regulations coming. And your competition? She asked. I tensed, knowing what she meant. My family's real estate firm was still a major player in sustainable development, even if their approach was more about PR than actual innovation. We're offering something completely different, I said firmly. True sustainability, not just greenwashing. Ms. Roberts nodded slowly, then pulled out her phone. Cancel my next meeting, she told her assistant, and get me the paperwork for a Series A investment. Daniel grabbed my hand under the table as she named a figure that made my head spin. Under one condition, she added. I want this scaled up and ready to showcase at the Green Innovation Expo in 3 months. 3 months? Harrison whistled. That's tight. It's doable, Daniel said confidently. We've done the hard part. Now it's just about scaling. Then we have a deal? Ms. Roberts stood, extending her hand. I shook it firmly. Deal. After she left, the 3 of us stood in stunned silence before erupting into cheers. Daniel picked me up and spun me around while Harrison started calling contractors. We did it, I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months. We actually did it. My phone buzzed, Ellie's name flashing on the screen. Please tell me that was good news about the investment, she said when I answered. Better than good. We're funded. How are things on your end? Your family's lawyers finally backed off on the theft accusations. They couldn't make anything stick. Of course they couldn't, I said, watching Daniel and Harrison argue playfully over expansion plans. Because we're building something completely new. Speaking of building, Ellie's voice turned serious. You should know your mother's firm just announced their own sustainable housing initiative. My celebration high-dimmed slightly. Let me guess. They're calling it revolutionary. They're calling it exactly what you proposed to them 2 years ago, except their version is all surface, no substance. I should have been angry, but instead I felt oddly calm. Let them try. We'll show them how it's really done. After hanging up, I joined Daniel and Harrison at the planning table. We need to think bigger, I announced. The expo isn't just about showing our technology. It's about showing everyone what's possible. You're thinking about your family's announcement? Harrison asked knowingly. I'm thinking about proving them wrong, I corrected. About everything, Daniel spread out fresh blueprints. Then let's make it impossible to ignore. Full-scale model unit, live demonstrations, the works. We worked late into the night, planning and dreaming. Around midnight, Harrison headed home, leaving Daniel and me surrounded by papers and possibilities. You okay? Daniel asked softly. With all of this? I looked around our workshop. At the prototype we'd built from scratch, the designs we'd refined together, the future we were creating. I'm better than okay, I said. For the first time, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. He kissed me softly. Then let's show the world what we can do. I glanced at my phone one last time before turning it off. There was a news alert about my mother's company featuring her proud announcement of their groundbreaking sustainable initiative. Oh, Mother, I whispered. You have no idea what's coming. Turn on the business news now. Ellie's voice crackled through my phone speaker. I fumbled for the remote, nearly spilling my morning coffee. The headline scrolling across the screen made me freeze. Major real estate firm faces investor exodus over false green claims. Your mother's company is in free fall, Ellie explained. Their sustainable housing initiative? Complete smoke and mirrors. Someone leaked internal documents showing they were just painting regular buildings green and calling it eco-friendly. I sank onto the couch, watching footage of my mother leaving her office building, surrounded by reporters. She looked smaller somehow, her designer suit not quite as crisp as usual. Pearl? Daniel emerged from our home office, concern etched on his face. You need to see this email. He handed me his laptop. The message was from one of my mother's biggest clients, now requesting a meeting with us. They're jumping ship, I whispered. All of them. My phone buzzed again, Levi this time. Mum's losing it, he texted. Dad's talking about selling assets. It's bad, Pearl. Daniel sat beside me, his hand warm on my shoulder. What do you want to do? Before I could answer, Harrison burst through our door, not bothering to knock. Have you seen the stock price? They've lost 40% in 2 hours. I saw, I said quietly. This is our chance, Harrison continued, pacing excitedly. We can grab their market share while they're down. The timing couldn't be better with the expo next week. My phone lit up with another call, my mother's number. After a year of silence, seeing it now felt surreal. Don't answer it, Harrison warned. Let them sweat. But I was already hitting accept. Hello, Mother. Pearl. Her voice was strained, none of its usual commanding tone. We need to talk. Now you want to talk? After a year of legal threats and silence? Please. The words sounded foreign coming from her. Things are complicated. They're not complicated, Mother. They're exactly what I warned you about 2 years ago when you rejected my sustainable design proposals. Remember? You said they were unrealistic and bad for business. Daniel squeezed my shoulder supportively. That was a mistake, she admitted. We're paying for it now. Yes, you are. I took a deep breath. What do you want? Your father and I? We need your help. Your expertise. We can offer you a position. Stop, I cut her off. I'm not interested in a position at your company. Pearl, be reasonable. This is family. Family? I laughed bitterly. You disowned me. Remember, when I chose love over your arranged marriage plan. Harrison was frantically gesturing at me, pointing to his watch. We had a meeting with potential clients in 30 minutes. I have to go, I told my mother. I have a business to run. Wait, she started, but I ended the call. The room was silent for a moment before Harrison spoke. You know they're desperate when they start playing the family card. They're not playing. Levi's voice came from the doorway. None of us had heard him arrive. It's worse than the news is reporting. Mum's lost 3 major developments. Dad's talking about bankruptcy. I stood, needing to move. Why are you here, Levi? Because I'm caught in the middle, and I'm tired of it. He looked exhausted. They're our parents, Pearl. Despite everything. They stopped being my parents the night they gave me an ultimatum, I reminded him. And now they're facing their own ultimatum, he countered. Karma's funny that way. Daniel, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke. The expo's next week. Every major developer in the country will be there. Including what's left of your mother's company, Harrison added. I looked at the news footage still playing silently on the TV. My mother's face was a mask of controlled panic as reporters shouted questions about fraudulent environmental claims. Pearl, Levi pleaded, at least think about it. I have thought about it, I said slowly. For a whole year I've thought about what I'd do if they ever needed my help. And? Daniel asked softly. And I think it's time to show them exactly what they threw away. I turned to Harrison. Move up our expo presentation. I want the prime slot, right after my mother's damage control speech. Harrison grinned. Now that's the kind of revenge I can get behind. It's not about revenge, I corrected, though part of me knew that wasn't entirely true. It's about showing them a better way. Whether they take it or not is up to them. Levi looked torn. They won't like being publicly upstaged. They didn't like me choosing my own path either, I reminded him. But this time, they don't get a vote. I grabbed my laptop, pulling up our presentation files. We have work to do. Mother wants to talk about family. Fine. Let's show her what real family looks like, the kind that builds each other up instead of tearing each other down. Daniel smiled, that warm, supportive smile that had given me strength for the past year. Where do we start? We start, I said, determination filling me, by changing everything. The Green Innovation Expo Centre buzzed with activity as I stood backstage, watching my mother's presentation through the monitor. Her voice wavered slightly as she addressed the crowd. Our commitment to sustainable development remains unwavering, she claimed, though the audience's skeptical murmurs suggested otherwise. She's bombing, Harrison whispered, adjusting his tie. Half the investors are checking their phones. I smoothed my dress, fighting the urge to peek around the curtain. How long until our slot? 20 minutes, Daniel replied, double-checking our prototype's controls. Everything's ready. Ellie appeared, tablet in hand. You need to see this. Your mother's company just filed for emergency restructuring. Before I could respond, Levi slipped backstage. Pearl, there's something else. Leonard's here. What? I spun around. Why? He's buying up shares in Mom's company while they're down. I think he's planning a hostile takeover. The irony wasn't lost on me. The man my parents had wanted me to marry was now circling their company like a vulture. My mother's voice cracked on stage. And now I'd like to introduce our new initiative. Mrs. Santiago, a expo coordinator, approached. There's a problem with your demonstration model. I watched on the monitor as my mother's face paled. The sustainable house model they'd brought, their last-ditch effort to save face, wasn't working. The solar systems were offline, the water recycling display frozen. We need 15 minutes, her technical team pleaded. We don't have 15 minutes, the coordinator said firmly. Either demonstrate now or forfeit your slot. That's when my mother did something I'd never seen before. She froze. Pearl, Daniel touched my arm. This is your call. I looked at my team, Daniel with his brilliant innovations, Harrison with his business savvy, Ellie with her unwavering support, then at Levi, caught between loyalty and truth. Get our model ready, I decided. Now. What are you going to do? Levi asked. I was already walking toward the stage, something either very smart or very stupid. My heels clicked against the floor as I emerged into the spotlight. The audience stirred, recognizing me. My mother turned, her eyes widening. Ladies and gentlemen, I spoke into the microphone. I'm Pearl, former chief architect at Santiago Developments, and current CEO of Green Innovations. The room fell silent. My mother stands here promising you sustainable solutions, but instead of empty promises, let me show you what real innovation looks like. I gestured and Daniel activated our model. The massive screen behind us lit up with live data as our prototype house hummed to life. This isn't a concept or a PR stunt, I continued. This is functional, affordable, truly sustainable housing, and it's ready for production today. For the next 10 minutes, I walked the audience through every feature, every breakthrough. Daniel joined me, explaining the technical aspects while Harrison provided market projections. The audience was captivated. Investors who had been checking phones were now filming, taking notes, leaning forward in their seats. My mother stood to the side, watching. For the first time in my life, I saw something new in her expression. Respect. As we wrapped up, the questions came flooding in, but one voice cut through the chaos. Fascinating presentation? Leonard stood up. Would your company be interested in a partnership opportunity? I smiled, ready for this. Actually, we've already signed exclusive deals with 3 major developers, but I'm sure there are other opportunities out there. The message was clear. We didn't need his money anymore. As the audience broke into discussion groups, my mother approached the stage. Pearl. Not here, I said quietly. My office, tomorrow morning. She nodded, understanding the shift in power. What time? 9 a.m. Bring Dad and the company books, all of them. She hesitated, then asked, Why are you doing this? Because you taught me to never waste a good business opportunity, I replied. And because, despite everything, you're still family. As she walked away, Daniel joined me. You okay? Better than okay, I said, watching Leonard storm out while investors crowded around our display. We just changed the game. Harrison appeared with his phone. Orders are already coming in. We're going to need a bigger factory. Pearl, Levi called out. Mum's board members want to meet with you. I looked at my team, my real family, and felt a surge of pride. Tell them to get in line. We've got work to do. As we gathered our materials, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the Expo Centre's glass walls. I barely recognized the confident businesswoman staring back at me. Ready to go build an empire? Daniel asked, taking my hand. I squeezed his hand, thinking of tomorrow's meeting. No, ready to rebuild one, the right way this time. The expo lights dimmed, but our future never looked brighter. Sometimes the sweetest victory isn't in destroying your opponents, but in becoming everything they said you couldn't be. 9 o'clock sharp, and my parents sat across from me in our sleek conference room. The stack of company books between us told a story of desperation they'd never admit out loud. Nice offices, my father commented stiffly, looking around at our modern workspace. Very progressive. We like it, I replied, watching Daniel set up his laptop for the presentation. Harrison sat beside me, reviewing the numbers one last time. My mother hadn't said a word since arriving. Her usual perfect makeup couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes. Let's get started, I said, opening the first folder. Your company's bleeding money. We're aware of our current challenges, my father bristled. Challenges? Harrison raised an eyebrow. You're 3 months from complete collapse. We didn't come here to be lectured by... My father started, but my mother cut him off. Robert, please, her voice cracked. Let them speak. I pulled up their financial projections. Your sustainable housing initiative was doomed from the start. You tried to fake innovation instead of actually innovating. We had shareholders to answer to, my father defended. And now those shareholders are jumping ship, I countered. Leonard's buying them out one by one. My mother flinched at Leonard's name. We understand our position. What's your proposal? Daniel stepped forward, pulling up our company's specs. A full merger, your construction expertise combined with our technology. Absolutely not, my father stood up. We built this company from nothing. We're not just handing it over to... To what, Dad? I interrupted. To your daughter? The one you threw away because she wouldn't marry for money? The room fell silent. Even Harrison looked uncomfortable. You're not in a position to negotiate, I continued softly. Leonard will take everything if you don't act now. At least with us, the company stays in the family. Family? My father laughed bitterly. You walked away from family. No. I stood to face him. You pushed me away. And look where that got us. My mother reached for the technical specifications, her hands trembling slightly. These numbers, they're remarkable. They're real, Daniel confirmed, unlike your Green Initiative claims. Margaret, my father warned, but she ignored him. How soon could we implement these systems? She asked. Mom! Robert, stop! She finally looked up, tears in her eyes. Our daughter built something amazing while we were too proud to see it, and now she's offering to save us. With conditions, Harrison added, sliding over a contract. My father snatched it up, his face reddening as he read. You want controlling interest, and to restructure the board? Yes, I said simply, because I won't let you destroy this company twice. You don't trust us, my mother realized. Would you, after everything? Levi chose that moment to walk in, carrying fresh coffee. The tension in the room hit him like a wall. How bad is it? He asked, looking between our parents. Your sister wants to take over, our father spat. No, I corrected. I want to save what's left, but only if you step back and let me do it right. The shareholders' meeting is tomorrow, Harrison reminded everyone. Leonard will make his move then. My mother reached for the contract. If we agree, what happens to the existing staff? We keep anyone who's willing to adapt, I assured her. This isn't about revenge, Mom. It's about building something better. Better than what we built? My father challenged. Better than what we could have built together, if you'd listened to me 2 years ago. Daniel pulled up the expo presentation footage. Watch this. Really watch it. For the next few minutes, my parents saw what the rest of the world had seen. True innovation, real sustainability, actual progress. This could save the company, my mother whispered. It will save the company, I corrected. But only if you both step down. My father opened his mouth to argue, but my mother grabbed his hand. Robert, look at her. Really look. She's not our little girl anymore. She's the CEO we always wanted her to be. Just not the way you planned, I added softly. The room fell quiet again, but this time it felt different. Like something was shifting. Finally, my father picked up a pen. You'll keep the company name? No, I said firmly. We build under our brand, but we'll honor the legacy by doing it right. He nodded slowly, then signed. My mother followed suit, her signature steadier than I expected. Welcome to Green Innovations, Daniel said, without a trace of irony. As Harrison gathered the paperwork, my mother stood and did something unexpected. She hugged me. I'm sorry, she whispered, for everything. I hugged her back, feeling the years of tension start to crack. I know. My father remained seated, still processing. But when Levi brought him coffee, I saw him smile slightly. You did good, kid, he admitted quietly. Better than we did. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. And this time, we'd build on a foundation of truth instead of expectations. The shareholders' meeting buzzed with tension as Leonard strode to the podium, his confidence radiating through his expensive suit. He had no idea what was coming. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, I stand before you with a solution to our company's current difficulties. I sat between my parents in the front row, watching him lay out his hostile takeover plan. Daniel squeezed my hand while Harrison smirked beside us. My offer represents the best path forward, Leonard continued. A clean break from recent, unfortunate decisions. My mother stiffened beside me. I touched her arm gently, a gesture that would have been unthinkable just days ago. Are there any other proposals before we vote? The board chairman asked. Actually, I stood up, smoothing my blazer. There are. Leonard's smile faltered as I walked to the podium. Recognition flickered across his face, followed by something darker. Pearl, he said through gritted teeth. What an unexpected surprise. Not really, I replied, taking control of the presentation screen. Green Innovations has already acquired controlling interest in this company. The room erupted in murmurs. Leonard's face reddened. That's impossible. The family wouldn't. The family did. My father stood up. As of yesterday, we've merged with Green Innovations under their leadership. Leonard turned to his lawyers, who were frantically flipping through papers. This isn't legal. The board hasn't approved. Check again, Harrison called out, waving a document. Emergency board meeting yesterday afternoon. All very legal, all very binding. I pulled up our new company structure on the screen. Shareholders will be pleased to know their stock value has already increased 12% since the merger announcement. Because of my bid, Leonard protested. No, I corrected, showing the market analysis. Because we've already secured contracts with 3 major developers who believe in actual sustainable innovation, not empty promises. The shareholders were paying attention now, calculators and phones out as they ran the numbers. This is absurd, Leonard sputtered. You're going to trust the company to the woman you tried to buy, I finished for him. No, they're trusting it to the CEO who just saved their investments. Daniel stepped forward with our prototype demonstrations. For the next 20 minutes, we showed the shareholders exactly what their money would build. Real innovation, real progress, real profits. The vote is simple, I concluded. Stay with us and be part of something revolutionary, or sell your shares to a man who represents everything wrong with old-school business. Leonard made one last attempt. This is emotional manipulation. She's using family drama to what? My mother suddenly spoke up. To build something better than we ever did. Yes, she is. The vote wasn't even close. Leonard stormed out before they finished counting, his takeover dreams crumbling behind him. As the shareholders filed out, many stopping to shake my hand, my father approached the podium. Pearl, he said quietly, I need to say something. Dad, we don't have to. Yes, we do. He took a deep breath. I was wrong. About everything. About you, about Daniel, about what makes a company strong. My mother joined us, her eyes wet. We both were. The past is past, I said firmly. We focus on the future now. Speaking of the future, Daniel called out, holding up his tablet. The first development site just got approved. We break ground next month. Harrison was already making calls. Media wants interviews. Everyone's talking about the merger. They're talking about more than that, Ellie appeared, showing us her phone. Leonard's other investments are taking hits. Turns out people don't like failed hostile takeovers. I looked around at my team, my family, both old and new, and felt something settle into place. Let's get to work, I announced. We have a company to rebuild. My father cleared his throat. About that. Your mother and I have been thinking. The old office building. It's not very sustainable. Not at all, my mother agreed. Perhaps it's time for a new headquarters, something that showcases what we can really do? Daniel's eyes lit up. I have some ideas about that. I bet you do, I laughed, then turned serious. But first we do this right. Full transparency, real innovation, no shortcuts. Wouldn't have it any other way, Harrison said, already pulling up potential locations. As we left the meeting room, I caught my reflection in the window. The woman staring back wasn't just a CEO or a daughter or someone's almost bride. She was herself, strong, capable, and finally, completely free. Ready to build something amazing? Daniel asked, falling into step beside me. I looked at my parents, now deep in discussion with Harrison about sustainable office designs. At Ellie, already drafting press releases. At Levi, grinning as he took down the old company logo. No, I smiled, ready to build everything. The future stretched out before us, bright and clear and entirely our own. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting better. And now, cutting the ribbon for our first sustainable community development, the mayor's voice boomed across the gathered crowd as I stood beside Daniel, holding the oversized scissors. Together, he whispered. Together, I agreed, and we cut the red ribbon to thunderous applause. Behind us stood the first of many, a beautiful residential complex that merged my architectural vision with Daniel's innovative technology. Solar glass sparkled in the morning sun, vertical gardens cascaded down the walls, and happy families waited to move into their new homes. "This is what real change looks like," Harrison announced to the reporters. "Affordable, sustainable living for everyone, not just the wealthy." I caught sight of Leonard in the crowd, looking decidedly less polished than the last time I'd seen him. His failed takeover attempt had cost him more than money. His reputation had taken a hit, too. "Pearl!" Levi called out, waving me over to where he stood with our parents. Mum was crying, but for once they were happy tears. "It's beautiful," she said, touching the living wall. "Even better than your original designs." "Because this time, I had the right support," I replied, watching Daniel demonstrate the solar systems to a group of excited residents. My father cleared his throat. "About that, I have something to show you." He led us to a bench in the complex central garden. "I found this while cleaning out my office." It was my original proposal from 2 years ago, the one they'd rejected. The pages were worn, covered in new notes in my father's handwriting. "You kept it?" I asked, surprised. "I read it every day after you left," he admitted, trying to understand where I went wrong. "Robert," my mother chided gently, "we both know where we went wrong. We valued the wrong things." Ellie appeared with a tablet. "Sorry to interrupt, but you need to see these numbers. Pre-orders for the next development are through the roof." "Not surprising," Harrison joined us. "After Leonard's company announced bankruptcy this morning." I looked up sharply. "What?" "Karma's funny that way," Levi grinned. "His investors pulled out after our success. Turns out people prefer real innovation to empty promises." A young family walked past, their children pointing excitedly at the rooftop playground. Their joy felt like validation. This was why we'd built this place. "Pearl," Daniel called out, "the residents want to thank you." I walked over to where several families had gathered. A woman stepped forward, holding her daughter's hand. "We never thought we'd be able to afford a home like this," she said. "You've given us a future." Her words hit me hard. This wasn't about beating Leonard or proving my parents wrong anymore. It was about changing lives. "Speaking of futures," Daniel whispered in my ear, "there's something I need to ask you." He led me to the rooftop garden, our favourite spot during construction. The city sprawled below us, and in the distance I could see the construction sites of our next projects. "Remember when we met?" he asked. "You said you wanted to build something meaningful." "I remember." He pulled out a small box. "I think we've done that, but I was hoping we could build something else together." My heart stopped as he opened the box, revealing a simple but elegant ring. "Is that—" I started. "Not a business merger," he smiled. "Just love." Before I could answer, applause erupted behind us. Our families, both old and new, had followed us up. "About time," Harrison called out. "Well," my mother prompted, and I realized she'd known about this. I turned back to Daniel. "Yes," I said simply. "Yes to everything." As he slipped the ring on my finger, I caught sight of our reflection in the solar glass. Not a power couple, but a partnership. Equal, supportive, real. "I have one condition, though," I said. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "We get married here, in the garden we built." "Perfect," my mother wiped away tears. "A new beginning in a new place." My father hugged me, really hugged me, for the first time in years. "We're proud of you, Pearl, not because of the company's success, but because of who you've become." Looking around at our gathered family, Harrison already planning the wedding logistics, Ellie and Levi arguing about colour schemes, my parents finally embracing the future instead of clinging to the past, I felt complete. "Ready to start our next project?" Daniel asked, taking my hand. Below us, families were moving into their new homes. Across the city, our other developments were rising, and here, in this garden we'd built from dreams and determination, our future was just beginning. "Always," I smiled, "but this time we're already home." The sun set behind us, painting the solar glass in shades of gold. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even or proving others wrong. Sometimes it's about building something so beautiful, so right, that it makes the past fade away like shadows at dawn.
In the soft glow of the hospital room, surrounded by the hum of medical machines, Thomas sauntered in with a smug grin. "Looks like you can't even manage the simple house chores. Maybe we should just call it quits," he jeered, oblivious to the gravity of my situation, tethered to life-saving equipment. Beside him stood a girl unfamiliar to me, witnessing the scene unfold. Little did Thomas realize, I had amassed a fortune worth $10 million, and for someone in my position, a housewife by his narrow definition, this divorce wasn't just about separation, it was a battle for survival. I contemplated silently. The disdain I felt for a man who could ridicule his wife in such a vulnerable state was overwhelming. Reaching into my bag, I retrieved the divorce papers I had preemptively prepared for an occasion just like this. Handing them to Thomas with a defiant smile, I said, "Consider this my parting gift." Thomas took the papers nonchalantly. "Well, I'm moving on with her." "You'll be all right," he remarked casually, draping his arm around the girl, whom he introduced as Victoria. With a taunting look, she said, "Farewell, Mrs. Soon-to-be-Ex. Take care, ma'am." As they exited the room, laughter echoed behind them, a sound stark against my solitude. Yet, I couldn't help but chuckle to myself. Today was Friday, and by Monday, the divorce would be finalized. The anticipation of a new beginning was thrilling. My name is Eleanor, a 40-year-old from a humble farming background, with no special skills to speak of, yet I took immense pride in my extensive culinary skills. Thomas and I were college sweethearts who had ventured to Oklahoma City from our rural roots. Living on our own, I loved preparing meals for him, using the fresh produce my family sent over. It was often said that I had won his heart through his stomach, and I believed it. Thomas had never been adept at household tasks, a role I had naturally filled since our dating days and throughout our marriage. Although childless, we had shared many joyful moments as a couple, often driving out on his days off to indulge in the culinary delights of various locales. In the early years, Thomas was a gentle soul, but time saw him change into a controlling partner. He never resorted to physical aggression, but his cutting remarks grew frequent and harsh. Despite the hurt, I rarely confronted him, doubting he would heed my words given my role as a full-time housewife. After college, Thomas landed a position at a prestigious company but eventually resigned. His attitude had shifted significantly by then, and our dynamic strained under his critical eye and my growing sense of inadequacy. Yet, through it all, I held on to my dignity and my secret fortune, ready to reclaim my life the moment the opportunity arose. And now, as I lay in that hospital room, that moment had finally come. After about 5 years into our marriage, Thomas had become accustomed to changing jobs frequently. He would quickly land new positions but would just as swiftly resign from them, leaving our financial situation precarious and unstable. However, for the last 3 years, he seemed to have found a groove with his current company, fitting in well with his colleagues. This gave me a glimmer of hope that he might finally settle into a long-term role. Then, one day, Thomas returned home unexpectedly early. As he walked through the door, he casually announced, "I'm home. I quit my job." "What? Again?" I blurted out before I could stop myself, my surprise making his eyebrows twitch in annoyance. Realizing I might have sparked his temper, I quickly abandoned my cooking and went to him. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to sound critical. It was just unexpected," I explained, hoping to diffuse the tension. "No welcome back?" Straight to criticism. "You're quite bold today," Thomas snapped back, his voice sharp and cold. At his words, I tensed, recognizing his foul mood could easily worsen. "I'm sorry," I replied softly, trying to placate him. "As long as you understand," he grumbled, slightly mollified by my apology. He then moved to the sofa and turned on the TV, sinking into his usual routine of disconnecting from everything else. I set a beer and a glass on the coffee table near him, then asked quietly, "Do you want dinner, or would you prefer a bath first?" "Food and alcohol," he responded bluntly. To keep the peace, I resumed my role as the accommodating wife, a role I had mastered over the past 16 years since marrying Thomas at the age of 30. My once vibrant personality had dimmed, and I rarely allowed my true feelings to surface. After Thomas had his fill of dinner and drinks, his mood improved slightly, and he eventually dozed off on the sofa, snoring loudly. The chaos on the table made it look as though a storm had passed through, with beer bottles and food scraps strewn about. As I began cleaning up, I couldn't help but reflect on how far removed this scene was from the life I had envisioned as a young, hopeful woman in love. Glancing at Thomas, who showed no sign of waking soon, a sense of relief washed over me. However, this was quickly followed by a creeping dread about continuing to live this way. Perhaps considering a divorce wasn't just a fleeting thought anymore. As I cleaned, I began mentally preparing for the next day, resolved to start addressing the issues I had long avoided. Meanwhile, Thomas would likely visit the employment office again, quickly securing another job as I ventured into the city to reclaim parts of the life I had put on hold. In the midst of our tumultuous marriage, I found a semblance of security by preparing divorce papers. Although I wasn't ready to file them just yet, simply having them signed and hidden away at the bottom of my daily use bag felt like a necessary shield. If Thomas ever stumbled upon them, I could only imagine his reaction. "Where did you go while I was out job hunting?" Thomas questioned as soon as I walked through the door. "I popped into the stationery store to pick up some resume paper," I replied, hoping to divert his attention. "I thought you might need them." That day, Thomas's demeanor was unusually contemplative. He started with a suspicious tone but seemed to lighten up when I handed him the resumes I had bought. After accepting them, he casually mentioned he was going out for drinks with a friend and swiftly left. His new job, he had told me earlier, was with a reputable company that offered a solid salary and better benefits than he had before. I clung to a faint hope that maybe this job would be the one he'd keep until retirement, especially since he seemed to fit well in the regional sales manage and started spending more evenings out. I treasured these moments of solitude, using them to rejuvenate, and always managed to greet Thomas with a smile upon his return. Then, one day, I received an unexpected call from my mother. Her voice brimmed with excitement as she disclosed a sudden financial windfall. "You know the mountain land we owned? We don't need it anymore. It's been appraised at $12 million, and we only need $3 million for ourselves. You should consider what this means for your life," she advised. My mother had never been fond of Thomas, particularly as his controlling nature worsened, even preventing me from visiting my childhood home. The news of the inheritance shocked me, not only because of the amount but also because she had transferred the property into my name to sidestep inheritance taxes. I was torn about whether to disclose this newfound fortune to Thomas or to seize it as a chance for a fresh start. About a week after this revelation, I was involved in a traffic accident. Thankfully, my life wasn't in danger, but I would need to be hospitalized for a week. After securing my valuables in the hospital room drawer, including the signed divorce papers, I reached out to Thomas. "I'm sorry," I started, preparing to navigate the complexities of our conversation and the decisions that lay ahead. After I informed Thomas about my accident, his first reaction was shockingly self-centered. What about my meals?" he asked, making me nearly lose my patience at his insensitivity. However, I managed to remain calm and explained further. "I need to be hospitalized for a week. I'm really sorry, but you'll have to find meals elsewhere until then." Thomas's response was anything but sympathetic. "Not even preparing meals for your husband? What a lazy wife," he scoffed. "Oh, wait, I'm coming over now," he added before abruptly ending the call. I had initially planned to tell him about the inheritance that evening, but his reaction made me reconsider if I should reveal it at all. As I lay in the hospital bed, surrounded by medical equipment and undergoing tests, I sensed that my instincts about not sharing the financial windfall were correct. When Thomas arrived, his harsh words confirmed my decision. "You're useless, can't even do housework. Let's get a divorce and you better pay me compensation," he said with a cruel smirk, not realizing that I was connected to numerous medical devices. Standing beside him was a girl I didn't recognize. Oblivious to my assets worth $10 million, he continued to underestimate the stakes of our situation. Convinced now more than ever that I no longer wanted a life with him, I decided it was time to act. "Fine, here are the divorce papers," I said, pulling them from my bag where they had been kept almost like a talisman. Thomas's smug expression as he took them only fueled my resolve. "I can finally say goodbye to you. I'm going to be happy with her," he declared confidently, wrapping his arm around the girl he called Natalia. Natalia leaned against him and mockingly said to me, "Take care, madam." "Oh, you're not a madam anymore. Take care, old lady." They left the room laughing, thinking they had the upper hand, but their shallow joy did not bother me. Alone in my hospital room, I burst out laughing. It was Friday, and the divorce would be processed by Monday. I eagerly awaited those 4 days, anticipating my newfound freedom. The weekend passed quietly without any word from Thomas. It was peaceful, and I felt a deep sense of relief and excitement about beginning a new chapter in my life, free from his negativity and control. Restlessness engulfed me as I lay in the hospital bed. The inactivity was unlike anything I was used to. Whenever I felt the urge to move, the nurses gently reminded me to stay calm. By Monday evening, my phone began to incessantly ring with calls from Thomas. At first, I chose to ignore them, but after 25 minutes of relentless ringing, I decided to pick up. "Stop calling me repeatedly," I urged as soon as I answered. Thomas's immediate shouting took me by surprise, but I couldn't help laughing, which only fueled his anger further. He was livid because the court hadn't accepted the divorce papers. Between chuckles, I informed him that I had previously filed a notice of non-acceptance. "Remember how you used to casually bring up divorce during our arguments? I thought it wouldn't be fair to let you impulsively file during one of those spats," I explained. Thomas was irate, but his tone soon shifted as he desperately wanted me to withdraw the non-acceptance. However, I was resolute in my new stance of not bending to his every whim. "I can't do anything until I'm discharged, and will need to handle this through proper channels at the municipal office," I told him, amused by his selfish demands. He seemed particularly frantic because he wanted to register his marriage with Victoria, the woman he had brought to the hospital on Friday. "Is her name Andrew, and is she your mistress?" I asked teasingly. Thomas corrected me, stating she was his new wife, and since we were still legally married, she was technically my mistress. This absurd exchange made me even more determined to stand my ground. I decided to hit back harder. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer about the division of property," I stated, emphasizing the legal troubles ahead. I reminded him of my loyalty and diligence in our marriage. I had always managed the household and never strayed. It was clear that Thomas was the one at fault, not me. Thomas seemed genuinely confused, thinking that my inability to take care of him while hospitalized was a failing on my part. I patiently explained that my current incapacity to do household chores did not constitute neglect on my end. "You've abandoned your responsibilities towards me," I pointed out. "Even if I were a child, this would be considered neglect. But I'm an adult, and you should be capable of taking care of yourself. My being in the hospital doesn't make me the one at fault." His twisted logic was bewildering, and I was certain that even a judge would find his reasoning absurd. As I lay in the hospital bed, my patience with Thomas was dwindling. He still clung to the belief that he was in the right, insisting that Natalia was now his wife and that I was no longer useful to him, hence my views didn't matter. I countered his claims by pointing out that his secret relationship with her constituted cheating, yet he seemed unfazed and continued to believe he was justified in his actions. Deciding enough was enough, I told him that any further communication should be done through our lawyers. I hung up the phone, cutting off his protests. Despite several more attempts from Thomas to reach me, I stood firm and ignored his calls, and eventually, he stopped trying. The respite was short-lived. The next day, my phone began ringing incessantly from the early morning. Thomas was on the other end, complaining that he couldn't withdraw money from a bank account. If it were truly a joint account, he shouldn't have faced any issues. Suspicious, I asked if he was trying to access my personal account. Thomas admitted he was indeed trying to take money from my funds. His audacity astounded me. Before my hospitalization, anticipating potential issues, I had called the bank to prevent any withdrawals until I could oversee them personally upon my discharge. This precaution was to curb Thomas's careless spending of my savings while I was incapacitated, a decision I now knew was wise. It's not right for you to try to take money from your ex-wife's account, especially after a divorce, I firmly told him over the phone. However, Thomas didn't see it that way and demanded that I allow a withdrawal immediately. I reminded him sharply, "We are practically strangers now, and I have no obligation to give money to strangers." Thomas was taken aback by my newfound assertiveness, having never seen me stand up to him in this manner before. He persisted, demanding that I send him money and even compensate for the housework I wasn't doing. It became evident that despite his education, Thomas lacked practical wisdom. After 15 years of marriage, I found myself addressing him as though he were a child, explaining the basic ethics of our situation and the legal boundaries now defining our interactions. His failure to grasp these concepts was disappointing but reinforced my decision to stand my ground. No longer the compliant wife he once knew, I was determined to handle the division of our property through legal channels. Thomas's frustration boiled over, and he threatened to visit me at the hospital immediately. I wasn't particularly bothered by the prospect of his arrival, as I had already instructed the nursing station to allow only my parents to visit me. Despite his threats, Thomas's attempts to see me were thwarted at the nurse's station, leaving him unable to reach my room. Meanwhile, my phone was bombarded with incessant calls, which I ignored, leading Thomas to switch to sending messages. My screen flooded with notifications, each one saved meticulously as potential evidence. Eventually, after contacting my lawyer, the relentless messages ceased, presumably due to my lawyer's intervention. Just as I thought the chaos was subsiding, an unexpected twist occurred. I received word of a visitor named Savannah, a longtime acquaintance who shared my passion for dining out. We had often enjoyed meals together before my marriage. Savannah, concerned about my injury, also brought startling news. She suspected that Natalia, the young woman with Thomas, was involved in an affair with him. Her connection to the situation was even more personal than I expected. Natalia turned out to be Savannah's niece. Savannah explained that Natalia had bragged to her sister, Savannah's mother, about marrying a 40-year-old man. When Savannah saw a photo of the supposed fiancé, she recognized him immediately as my husband. Shocked by this twist of fate, Savannah informed her sister about the upheaval Natalia had caused in my life. Firm in her family values, Savannah considered demanding compensation from Natalia for the trouble caused. Despite the messy situation, Savannah reassured me of her unwavering support and friendship, which we had cherished for over 2 decades. She had already arranged a meeting with them to address the situation, ensuring that our friendship would not be compromised by these events. Upon my discharge from the hospital, I headed to a pre-arranged meeting at a private restaurant room, accompanied by my lawyer. Thomas and Natalia were already there, indulging in an expensive traditional meal with astonishing nonchalance. Thomas had the audacity to remind me to bring money and pay for their meal. At that moment, fueled by the recent developments and the support of my friend, I decided it was time to assert myself and stand up to Thomas once and for all. I firmly instructed Thomas and Natalia to handle their own bill, as I wasn't there to subsidize their lavish meal but to assert my rightful claim over the assets. Ignoring Thomas's disparaging remarks, my lawyer and I settled into our seats and laid out the evidence that demonstrated Thomas's culpability in our marital breakdown. We presented a slew of documents and legal arguments highlighting Thomas's responsibilities and misdeeds in the marriage, alongside detailed plans for the division of property. We also unveiled photographs that Savannah had taken, showing Thomas and Natalia together, as well as Natalia with another man entering a hotel. This evidence visibly unsettled both Thomas and Natalia, halting their dinner abruptly. Savannah chose that exact moment to join us, admitting she was the one who captured those incriminating photos. Natalia was visibly confused and distressed upon seeing her aunt. Savannah explained her presence, expressing her desire to maintain her friendship with me despite demanding reparations from Natalia for her actions, which she condemned as disgraceful. Natalia then dropped a bombshell. She claimed to be pregnant. However, Savannah, observing her closely, disputed Natalia's appearance as someone expecting a child. This revelation seemed to shock Thomas as well, and under the weight of the gathered eyes, Natalia crumbled and confessed to lying about the pregnancy. She admitted her strategy had been to target affluent older men, and Thomas had unfortunately been ensnared in her deceit. She revealed that the fabricated pregnancy was a desperate attempt to secure her position as Thomas had shown reluctance to divorce. Thomas was left speechless by these revelations, and before long, Savannah escorted Natalia out of the restaurant for a more private discussion about her actions and the forthcoming apology. Meanwhile, Thomas, now realizing the extent of the deception, pleaded with me to reconsider our relationship, suggesting that as a housewife I couldn't possibly manage without him. I corrected him firmly, disclosing that I had a personal net worth of about $10 million, which would more than suffice for me to live independently and comfortably without him. Thomas, taken aback by this, greedily inquired about a share of my wealth, but I clarified that it was my inheritance and not subject to marital division. Following this encounter, I proceeded with the divorce, ending nearly 2 decades of marriage. In the aftermath, Natalia compensated me financially, influenced by her mother and Savannah to make amends. Thomas, now estranged by his in-laws, found himself burdened with debts and without his former job, as his escapades with Natalia during work hours had come to light. He resorted to working multiple jobs in construction to manage his financial obligations. I donated a portion of the received compensation to charity and moved to the countryside with the rest, relishing a luxurious single life. Savannah and I continued to strengthen our bond, planning to remain single, share accommodations, and indulge in our love for food and travel. The move to a simpler, joyful life in the countryside was set for the following week, and I looked forward to embracing a future that was authentic and fulfilling, surrounded by true friends like Savannah.
Hi, my name's Abigail, and I'm 29 years old. At the moment, I'm expecting a baby and I'm in my 8th month of pregnancy. Today, my husband and I are off to visit his family, which is just a half-hour drive from our apartment. We make this trip pretty often, about 2 to 3 times a month. The reason for our visit today is my mother-in-law's legendary apple pie. She's such a kind soul, especially since bouncing back after losing her husband last year. She's been looking forward to welcoming her grandchild with open arms. Not everyone in the family shares the excitement about our upcoming addition, though. My sister-in-law Eliana is one of them. She got married 6 years before us, but hasn't been able to get pregnant despite starting fertility treatments 2 years ago. The pressure seems to have made her quite tense. My mother-in-law suggested we try to avoid crossing paths with Eliana to keep the peace, so we usually visit when she's not around. However, today, Eliana surprised us by showing up. Upon seeing me, Eliana couldn't help but comment on my weight, jokingly asking if I was just lazing around because I was pregnant. I was taken aback by her blunt words. My husband quickly defended me, pointing out how inappropriate her comment was, especially to someone who's pregnant. Eliana retorted that she was just concerned about my health and responsibilities as a mother. I decided to respond calmly, agreeing with her to avoid escalating the situation. Yet Eliana pushed further, suggesting I should clean the house to get some exercise. She handed me. With a broom and dustpan in hand, Eliana insisted I start cleaning. However, her actions quickly drew rebukes from both my mother-in-law and husband. She retreated upstairs, leaving the atmosphere tense. My mother-in-law, looking quite sorry, apologized for the unexpected encounter, emphasizing that Ilana's arrival was unanticipated. I reassured her that it was okay, not wanting anyone to fret over the situation. My husband echoed his mother's apologies, explaining that Eliana often acted impulsively. Despite the earlier discomfort, we managed to enjoy a cozy afternoon filled with delicious apple pie and warm tea, although Eliana chose to stay away. Little did we know, a far more serious event was on the horizon. A few days later, I visited my in-laws' home alone for a chat with my mother-in-law. To my surprise, I found the front door unlocked and Eliana inside. She claimed to have taken the day off and, upon seeing me, handed me the cleaning tools again, suggesting I had interrupted her last time. To keep the peace, I began to clean, despite feeling unwell from the morning. The discomfort gradually worsened into pain, prompting me to consider a break. That's when Eliana, shockingly, kicked me, causing my water to break. Overwhelmed by pain and unable to stand, I managed to call my mother-in-law for help before blacking out. I regained consciousness in a hospital bed, confused and in pain, noticing the absence of my previously pregnant belly. Panic set in as I pressed the nurse call button, anxiously waiting for someone to explain what had happened to my baby. When I came to, I learned from the doctors that my water had broken unexpectedly, and an emergency cesarean section had been necessary. My newborn was tiny and needed the warmth and safety of an incubator, but thankfully was in stable condition. Both my mother-in-law and husband, upon hearing the news, were visibly upset but relieved about the baby's well-being. Determined to recover quickly for my baby, I focused on resting as much as possible, looking forward to the moment I could hold my little one. However, the following day took a shocking turn when Eliana, the very person responsible for my premature labor, barged into my hospital room alongside her husband, without so much as a knock. Their audacity left me speechless, and their next words even more so. They proposed a financial settlement for the incident, a suggestion that sent shivers down my spine. Refusing their offer only led them to bombard me with insults, still reeling from the surgery and the thought of my newborn enduring such a start to life. Their offer of a settlement was laughable, and in my frustration, I told them I had no intention of letting this go lightly. They seemed shocked by my refusal and began to insist, rudely suggesting I should be grateful for their proposal and accusing me of disrespecting my elders. Their persistence escalated into a heated argument, oblivious to the fact that we were in a hospital. The tense moment was interrupted by the forceful entrance of my husband. His towering presence and deep voice immediately shifted the atmosphere. Eliana and her husband, who had been so bold moments before, were visibly taken aback by his sudden appearance. Despite their attempts to play off the encounter as a mere coincidence, my husband demanded an explanation for their unacceptable behavior, making it clear there was no excuse for what they had proposed in the wake of such a family crisis. Eliana tried to soften the tension with a shaky voice, insisting that their offer of money was out of guilt and a desire to resolve the situation without legal action. However, my husband, William, remained incensed. He made it clear that the decision of accepting a settlement lay with me, not them. Furthermore, he questioned how they could possibly think money could compensate for the trauma and risk they caused, highlighting the seriousness of my emergency surgery and our baby's condition. I stood by my husband's side, affirming that no sum of money could undo the harm or negate the consequences they must face. Eliana seemed to think that a financial offer could easily smooth over their grievous mistake. Despite the relief that my daughter and I were okay, the thought of what could have happened weighed heavily on me. Eliana's ignorance of the potential severity of her actions was startling, and it seemed her husband might share her lack of awareness. In response to my stance, Eliana became defensive, accusing me of intentionally flaunting my pregnancy to hurt her due to her infertility issues. This accusation left me astounded. Our encounters during my pregnancy had been minimal, with Eliana usually retreating at the sight of me. Her claim of me rubbing my pregnancy in her face puzzled me, as she hardly ever witnessed such moments. Despite her reasoning, her actions were inexcusable. The danger she put both my baby and me in was unforgivable, and my husband and I were united in this sentiment. Understanding her struggles with infertility did not excuse endangering another's life. The gap between understanding and forgiveness remained wide, with no amount of explanation justifying her harmful actions. My husband attempted to reason with them, but it was evident they were not interested in listening. They seemed eager to leave the situation behind, showing no signs of remorse. Overwhelmed by their indifference, especially as I was still recovering from my recent surgery, I expressed my exhaustion and desire for quiet. The commotion they were causing was too much for me in my vulnerable state, and I warned them I'd involve the police if necessary. Their presence and lack of empathy only made my recovery harder. After my husband escorted them out, the weight of the encounter hit me hard. Fortunately, we had prepared for such situations. My husband had discreetly recorded our conversation, providing us with solid evidence. My mother-in-law, equally enraged by her daughter's recklessness, supported our decision to take legal action, given the risk Eliana's actions had posed to both me and her grandchild. Determined, we filed a police report and Eliana was brought in for questioning. During the legal proceedings that followed, Eliana maintained her innocence to our lawyer, claiming she was the one emotionally harmed due to her infertility struggles and accusing me of exacerbating her pain. Initially willing to pay to settle the dispute, she then shifted her stance, arguing for mutual blame and suggesting we dismiss the entire incident. Her confidence waned when confronted with the recording of our hospital room conversation. Presented with undeniable evidence, Eliana and her husband were visibly shaken. Despite this, Eliana's refusal to accept responsibility led her to act rashly, throwing her coffee at us in a fit of anger. Luckily, the coffee was cold, sparing us any physical harm, but her conduct and words during the meeting added to the charges against her, significantly increasing the compensation she was liable for. Throughout this tumultuous process, her attempts to dodge responsibility only fueled our resolve. The recorded conversation was a turning point, firmly debunking her claims of innocence and ensuring that justice would be pursued for the reckless endangerment of my and my baby's lives. My brother-in-law departed from his workplace facing charges of assault directed towards me, stemming from a recent incident. The financial compensation we requested from my sister-in-law had grown significant. Upon explaining the situation to my mother-in-law, her reaction was one of profound regret. She earnestly apologized for her daughter's actions, insisting there was no need for us to settle. "I'm truly sorry for the trouble caused by my daughter. I will ensure she faces the necessary consequences," she said with tears in her eyes. This left me pondering the distress adult children can sometimes bring to their parents, feeling a deep sense of sympathy for my mother-in-law. Ultimately, my sister-in-law was required to pay a considerable sum in compensation. Taken aback by the amount, she repeatedly contacted me, arguing we should lower it because we were both to blame. I found her reasoning baffling, given her actions. Despite her frequent calls, my stance remained unchanged. We would not reduce the compensation or consider settling. Her persistence soon became an annoyance, and I firmly told her to stop, which only angered her further. In an astonishing move, she stormed into my apartment, demanding my presence with loud shouts despite me recovering on the couch from a recent surgery. "Are you all right? Your yelling is disturbing everyone," I responded, hoping she'd cease her loud banging on the door. The noise was particularly concerning given the presence of elderly residents and families with infants in our building, and it was well past 7 p.m. My husband hadn't yet returned from work since my hospital discharge. Between visiting my daughter, feeling unwell, and now dealing with this unexpected and loud visit from my sister-in-law, I was completely overwhelmed. Her actions disregarded the peace of our neighbors and my own health, showing a startling lack of consideration. "I'm not changing my mind, so please stop coming here," I urged, holding my ground despite feeling weak and visibly ill. Yet, my sister-in-law's desperation for a resolution seemed to render my well-being moot. She retorted, not out of malice, but seemingly from a place of deep-seated frustration. "You know I didn't want it to come to this. Your actions have forced my hand. It was inconsiderate of you to get pregnant before me." To her, it appeared that the timing of pregnancy was a matter of competition, a concept foreign and nonsensical to me. I don't see pregnancy as a race or a contest of honor. However, for my sister-in-law, who has faced years of infertility struggles, her perspective seemed to be tainted by her challenges. "Everyone holds their values, but that doesn't justify causing harm," I responded. "I understand your pain over infertility, but it doesn't excuse your actions. I cannot forgive you for endangering my daughter. That, above all, is inexcusable." Just then, the wail of sirens filled the air, a clear indication that the commotion had alerted someone in the building. "Well, if you're making such a scene at this hour, the police being called is only to be expected," I remarked dryly. In a panic, she pleaded, "The police? "You have to hide me." But I had no intention of aiding her evasion. When the police arrived, they began their inquiries with her, while I shared my side of the story. It was around this time my husband returned, and I quickly briefed him on the unfolding events. He relayed the entire ordeal to the officers, who then escorted my sister-in-law away. Later that night, my brother-in-law informed me of his decision to divorce my sister-in-law and requested to be kept out of the ensuing drama, a plea that seemed to serve his interests more than anything. Amidst all this, I learned that a colleague of my husband had been at the hospital, suggesting the ripple effects of the incident reached further than our immediate family, underscoring the complexity and depth of its impact. After my admission to the hospital, my husband's colleague overheard my brother-in-law's conversation, and, by the time he returned to work, the story had spread, particularly among the female staff. This led to my brother-in-law facing a considerable amount of judgment, and eventually, the details made their way to the HR department. Realizing that there was no way to deflect the situation, my brother-in-law came clean about the entire ordeal. The company decided that it was best for him to be transferred to a regional office, citing that his actions were not in line with company values. He expressed a strong desire to steer clear of any further complications, mentioning, "I can't afford to be wrapped up in more issues. Any more trouble and I'll lose my job. So please keep me out of this." That was the last conversation we had, and I've not heard from him since. In the aftermath, we received a significant amount of compensation from my sister-in-law. To prevent any future disturbances, we took the step of changing our phone numbers and relocating. This way, even if she found herself in dire straits and sought our assistance, locating us would be impossible. A few months went by, and my daughter was finally discharged from the hospital, thankfully with no lasting health issues. She has been thriving and growing stronger by the day. Meanwhile, word around the grapevine was that my sister-in-law found herself in a precarious financial situation. Initially, she hopped from one friend's place to another, but her lack of contribution to household expenses and her overstaying her welcome led to her being asked to leave. Now, with no place to call home and burdened by financial debt, she's resorted to working part-time jobs just to make ends meet. Abigail's world turned upside down when she discovered she might have inherited over $6 million. Her mother-in-law, lost in a daydream, excitedly talked about building a duplex with a kitchen from her dreams as if the money was already theirs to spend. Her husband, William, quit his job, planning to dive into a business venture using the inheritance Abigail supposedly received. Confused and frustrated, Abigail tried to correct them. She hadn't seen a penny of that inheritance yet. "Why are you making such big plans when I've repeatedly said the inheritance isn't in our hands yet?" Abigail questioned, bewildered by their actions and plans for trips to places like Hawaii, fueling the chaos with her in-laws' grand dreams. The situation made no sense to Abigail. The thought of her loved ones wanting to spend her mother's legacy however they wished, without her consent, filled her with a silent fury. This bizarre turn of events had its roots a few months back. Abigail, a dedicated college professor of 34, and William, her facilities manager husband of 36, had built a life together for 10 years, enriched by the arrival of their daughter, Isla. Life was a blend of work, family time, and caring for Isla, who brought endless joy into their lives. On a visit to her ailing mother in the hospital with Isla, a tender scene unfolded. Her mother, frail yet smiling, gently caressed Isla's hair, a moment of love amidst the stark hospital setting. A middle-aged man in glasses, who briefly interacted with Abigail, turned out to be more than just an acquaintance, hinting at matters of significance waiting to unfold. Abigail's mother, with eyes mirroring the depth of the sky, shared a smile that hid years of sacrifice and love. She had followed her heart across the globe, marrying a man who brought her to the U.S. to start a family in a land unfamiliar. Together, they faced the challenges of raising Abigail in a foreign culture, a testament to their resilience and love. Now, as her mother lay in a hospital bed, their past of joys and struggles came back to Abigail, reminding her of the strength inherited from her parents. This inheritance, however, was not just of love and memories, but seemingly also of a significant monetary legacy, sparking dreams and greed among Abigail's in-laws. Caught in the whirlwind of her family's sudden plans and expectations, Abigail found herself at a crossroads, reflecting on her values, her family's future, and the true meaning of inheritance. Growing up, I was blessed with parents who were a true team. Their unwavering support and the lessons my mother instilled in me from a young age are the bedrock of my career as a college professor today. My gratitude towards them knows no bounds, especially for the loving and comfortable life they provided. However, life took a turn when my father passed away, leaving my mother to face her twilight years with illness. She eventually had to hand over the family business to a relative and now spends her days in a hospital, a quiet observer of the world she once actively participated in. "Are you okay, Mom? Do you need anything?" I often ask during our visits. Her reply is always filled with warmth. "Just seeing you and Isla is more than enough for me." These exchanges and the precious moments Isla shares with her grandmother, talking about school and the books she's read, are bittersweet. Isla, at the delicate age of 10, is as bright and sincere as they come, making our relationship a source of pride and joy. Returning home from one such visit, William, my husband, inquires about his mother-in-law's well-being. His curiosity is genuine, though lately he seems more preoccupied with financial seminars aimed at fostering dreams of entrepreneurship. William's newfound ambition for wealth, presumably influenced by his parents' frugality and occasional requests for money, strikes me as misplaced. Our financial situation is stable, thanks to our combined incomes, yet his parents' reluctance to spoil Isla, even on Christmas, has only widened the emotional distance between our families. Thankfully, geographical distance spares us from frequent encounters with his penny-pinching parents. William compensates with his adeptness at managing our home, which keeps our life relatively peaceful and content. Surrounded by my mother, husband, and daughter, I cherish our simple yet fulfilling existence. This tranquility was shattered one day by a phone call from the hospital, bearing news of my mother's sudden decline. The stability of our lives seemed to hang in the balance as I grappled with this unexpected challenge, reminding me of the transient nature of comfort and the inevitable confrontations with reality we all must face. When the call came that my mother was critically ill, we hurried to the hospital, fearing the worst. Arriving to find her struggling for each breath was a moment etched in pain and disbelief. "Mom! Mom! Grandma! No!" we cried, our voices a blend of desperation and love. Her final words to me, filled with a lifetime of love and wisdom, were a plea for happiness and a reminder to treasure Isla, my daughter, above all else. "I love you," she whispered, leaving us with a legacy of love and the memory of her devotion. Standing beside her coffin, the serene expression on my mother's face offered a stark contrast to the storm of grief within me. Isla, too, wept beside me, our shared sorrow a testament to the profound loss we felt. In the quiet days following her departure, an unexpected envelope found its way to our doorstep. Sent by a law firm, its contents revealed a truth unknown to me. My mother had left her entire inheritance to me. Surprised and somewhat bewildered, since we'd never discussed such matters, I decided to seek clarity from the source and made my way to the law firm. There, I was greeted by attorney Sophia, the same dignified gentleman I had briefly encountered at the hospital. "You were there in my mother's room," I remarked, recognition dawning. His confirmation and the gentle tone of his voice brought an unexpected rush of emotions. The revelation that followed left me staggered. My inheritance, coupled with my mother's assets and even after taxes, amounted to $900 million. Sophia explained that when my father passed, I had renounced my claim to allow my mother to inherit everything. Now, she had named me the sole beneficiary of this vast fortune. The weight of this news, the magnitude of my mother's trust in me, and the memory of her last moments filled me with a profound sense of responsibility and a desire to honor her legacy in every choice I made moving forward. Growing up, I knew my parents were well off, but the magnitude of the inheritance they left behind was beyond my imagination. Throughout my marriage, I never once reached out to them for financial assistance, steering clear of discussions about inheritance due to a superstition that it was bad luck to do so. When I learned of the inheritance left for me, a wave of dizziness overwhelmed me. It was a profound gesture of love from my mother. With these thoughts swirling in my head, I entrusted all legal matters to Sophia, the attorney. He assured me of his support, emphasizing my mother's deep care for me and her wish for him to be there for me. Grateful for his assistance, I thanked him sincerely before stepping out of his office. As time moved forward, the period of mourning for my mother's passing brought unexpected challenges. William, my husband, who had known of my family's wealth, began to inquire more persistently about the inheritance, especially as we approached the date of my mother's 53rd day memorial service. Despite my grief, he couldn't help but bring up financial matters, a behavior that left me disheartened. My in-laws' behavior during this time was particularly unsettling. At the memorial service, they offered their assistance with the inheritance, despite never having shown any willingness to help before. Their sudden interest and offers of help felt disingenuous, leaving me to respond with non-committal answers. Then, 3 months after my mother's passing, William's patience seemed to run out. He bluntly asked if I'd received the inheritance, prompting a sense of foreboding within me. In response, I told a white lie, claiming the legal procedures were still ongoing. In truth, I had followed Sophia's advice and secured the inheritance in a safe deposit box, but admitting that didn't feel like the right choice at the moment. This decision to withhold the truth was driven by a need to protect the inheritance from being mishandled, hoping to honor my mother's legacy in a way that felt true to her wishes and the love she had always shown me. 2 months had passed since my mother's death, and William, my husband, was curiously upbeat as he mentioned the time frame and questioned whether I'd completed the inheritance procedures. "So, have you?" he prodded, his tone laced with an odd mixture of anticipation and indifference. Without waiting for my response, he cheerfully announced he was heading to bed, leaving a trail of confusion and concern behind him. The unease from our conversation lingered within me as I prepared for the next day. However, life had to go on, and so, with a heavy heart, I turned in for the night, hoping sleep would offer some respite from the whirlwind of emotions. The following evening, as Isla and I were tidying up after dinner, the sudden ring of the doorbell pierced the calm of our home. Isla raced to answer it, and I, curious, peeked from the kitchen, only to find an unexpected sight: my in-laws standing at the doorstep, with William returning from work alongside them. Their presence was both surprising and unwelcome, given the timing. "Why are you all here?" I asked, a mix of surprise and apprehension in my voice. William brushed off my concern, suggesting Isla retreat to her room, which she did, though not without casting a worried glance our way. My father-in-law, Sophia, couldn't contain his excitement as he declared there was a reason for celebration. He jovially retrieved a beer from the fridge, his actions brimming with a sense of occasion. My mother-in-law, equally enthused, shared their grand plan. They had begun the construction of a duplex intended for us to live together, a project that included what she described as a dreamlike modern kitchen. Confusion washed over me. "What are you talking about?" I demanded, trying to grasp the reality of their claims. William joined in, explaining with a grin that they had used their savings along with money set aside for this purpose, expecting me to cover the rest with my inheritance. He proudly added that he had quit his job to start a business with the funds he assumed would be available from the inheritance. I stood there, dumbfounded. "Hold on, what are you all talking about?" I repeated, my mind racing to understand how they could make such significant decisions without my consent or even a clear confirmation of the inheritance's status. The situation was spiraling into absurdity, and I struggled to find my footing amidst the revelations and assumptions being laid before me. "I've already told you, I haven't received any inheritance yet. And what's this about quitting your job and planning a duplex? This doesn't make sense," I tried to explain, my confusion growing by the second. Ignoring my protests, the conversation spiraled into plans for a luxurious trip to Hawaii, as if the duplex and the business weren't enough. Amidst the escalating excitement, William, with a mocking laugh, accused me of being stingy. "Abigail, We did our homework. You can't just walk away from an inheritance by not claiming it. It's been 3 months. Whether you processed it or not, the inheritance is yours. Given the size of your father's business, it has to be substantial. We're set for a comfortable life thanks to your parents. Just make sure you sort out the finances for the duplex and my startup capital. Hearing William talk like this, as if my inheritance was theirs to command, left me reeling. How could they so blatantly plan to use the legacy my mother left me for their indulgences? Swallowed by anger yet unable to express it, fearful of upsetting Isla who was nearby, I excused myself, stepping out into the cool night. Alone, my steps led me to the hilltop park, a place of solace shared with my mother. There, under the cover of night, I allowed my tears and frustration to flow, mourning not just my mother's passing, but the exploitation of her love for me. Despite the turmoil, the thought of divorce seemed too drastic, especially with Isla in the picture. My mother's admonition to prioritize Isla echoed in my heart, renewing my tears. Unexpectedly, a gentle voice broke through my sorrow. The stranger's soft words offered a moment of unexpected solace in my turmoil. After taking some time to gather my thoughts and strength, I arranged a meeting with William and my in-laws at a restaurant. It was time to confront the situation head-on to reclaim control of my life and my mother's legacy. "So, you've decided to come back," they said upon my return. Following a tense confrontation, Abigail stood firm against the incredulous stares of her husband William and her in-laws. They were pressing her about withdrawing the inheritance, chiding her for leaving the house without notifying William, a statement that highlighted their control rather than concern. In a decisive move, Abigail revealed a document that silenced the room, a divorce notice, meticulously filled out and irrevocable in its intent. "William, I want a divorce," she declared, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling within her. The announcement sent shockwaves through the room. William's initial panic quickly morphed into anger, accusing Abigail of abandoning the family post-inheritance, suggesting the money had transformed her. Yet it was Abigail who countered, outlining how it was William who had changed, embarking on reckless ventures and making unilateral decisions that threatened their family's stability. As the dispute escalated, with William and his parents asserting a claim to half of Abigail's inheritance by virtue of marriage, the atmosphere tensed, ready to snap. At that moment, the door opened and 2 unexpected allies stepped in: Isla, their daughter, and Sophia, the attorney managing Abigail's inheritance. Isla's presence and Sophia's introduction cut through the tension. Sophia, acknowledging his role in safeguarding Abigail's interests, clarified a crucial legal point. The inheritance from a deceased parent does not merge into marital assets and remains solely Abigail's. This revelation dismantled the arguments of William and his parents, highlighting their misunderstanding and entitlement. Sophia's calm but firm clarification underscored a fundamental truth about inheritance laws, protecting Abigail's rights and her mother's legacy. The unfolding scene, a blend of personal resolve and legal clarity, underscored a pivotal moment of assertion and protection, with Abigail standing her ground, backed by the unwavering support of her daughter and the expertise of her attorney. In a room charged with tension and disbelief, my announcement of seeking a divorce seemed to push everyone to their limits. "You must be joking. This can't be happening," they protested, clearly shaken by the turn of events. It dawned on me then they had genuinely believed that my inheritance would somehow become theirs to claim. This realization only solidified my decision to leave, a choice that William, with a desperate look in his eyes, refused to accept. "I won't let you go no matter what," he declared, disregarding the gravity of the situation. It was Isla who cut through the tension with her calm yet firm intervention. "Enough," she said, her voice resonating with maturity far beyond her years. She then laid bare the truth that had been gnawing at the heart of our family. Since the inheritance came into play, had anyone truly considered my feelings or well-being? All discussions had revolved around money, leaving no room for genuine familial bonds or consideration for Isla herself. "How can I see you as my family when all you do is chase after Grandma's legacy for your own gain? I'm with Mom on this," she declared, her decision clear. Her words were a catalyst for my own resolve. It was Isla's bravery in confronting the situation that spurred me to arrange this crucial meeting with Sophia, our attorney. Despite attempts by William and my in-laws to sway her with promises of happiness and thinly veiled attempts to minimize her role in this decision, Isla remained unwavering. "I'm staying with Mom. I cannot stand to be with you any longer," she stated, turning away, signaling the end of any debate. As I calmly reiterated our decision to leave, William's frustration boiled over. "I've done nothing wrong. You can't just divorce me and take everything. I'll fight this. I'll get a lawyer." "We'll see about the money," he blustered, revealing his true concerns were not about our family, but about the financial gains he perceived slipping through his fingers. In this moment of turmoil, the bond between Isla and me only strengthened, our resolve firm in the face of adversity. The path forward was clear, marked by our mutual decision to protect and prioritize our well-being over any material inheritance. "Let me handle this," Sophia said in a calm, reassuring tone, outlining the situation with precision. He explained that the core issue was the multitude of serious reasons why the marriage couldn't continue: William's impulsive decision to quit his job, his unauthorized use of our family savings, and the push to cohabit with my in-laws against our wishes. Isla's discomfort was palpable. She had even recorded conversations where my in-laws and William were clearly overstepping boundaries, eyeing my inheritance. This, Sophia pointed out, would serve as crucial evidence in our favor. Confronted with the reality of their actions, William's confidence waned, and my in-laws' faces lost their color. Following this confrontation, Isla and I made our exit, leaving behind the chaos for a new beginning. With Sophia's diligent legal support, my divorce from William was finalized a year later. Isla and I then moved into the home once filled with my mother's presence, seeking solace in its familiarity. Despite moving on, reminders of the past would occasionally surface: letters from William, his unexplained appearances near Isla's school, each incident a stark reminder of the need to maintain our distance. We turned to Sophia once more, this time for a restraining order, seeking peace from the persistent intrusions. Meanwhile, rumors reached us that William and my in-laws had managed to build the duplex they'd planned, yet their victory was short-lived. Financial struggles forced them into manual labor, and the household was plagued by constant disputes, alienating them further within their community. Amid these echoes of turmoil, Isla and I found tranquility. One day, Isla expressed a desire to study abroad in the very country my mother had once called home. Embracing this new chapter, we decided to relocate overseas, utilizing a portion of my inheritance to fund our fresh start. This decision, I believe, would have made my mother proud. Now settled in a new country, Isla thrives in her school environment, and I've embraced my role as a college professor once more. Together, we cherish each peaceful day, hopeful for the continuity of this serenity, a testament to our resilience and the enduring bond between mother and In 6 months, I'll be donning my graduation cap, stepping into a future that already promises a new job. This milestone marks a turning point where, frankly, we no longer need her presence in our lives. However, until we claim what's rightfully ours, she remains a reluctant part of our household, a piece of the past I'm eager to leave behind. In this particular moment, I discovered Mac was also awake despite our separate living quarters. I never planned to listen in on their conversation, but the shocking nature of their words rooted me to the spot, unable to move or interrupt. For the next 5 months, I carried on as if their words had never reached my ears, keeping my reactions and interactions unchanged. And then, the day of Kylan's college graduation arrived. He burst out of the house in the early hours, a bundle of nerves and excitement, without so much as a nod of acknowledgement for the years of care and support I'd provided. "I won't need dinner tonight," was all he managed before leaving, a casual comment that might have gone unnoticed if I hadn't been privy to that previous conversation. I couldn't shake the feeling that even a simple thank you or an invitation to celebrate this moment together would have meant the world to me. It seemed evident he planned to celebrate with his biological mother and Mac, leaving me to contemplate the day in solitude. As the door closed behind them, I found myself alone, surrounded by the silence of an empty room, my only company a piece of paper and a pen. My name is Celia, a 51-year-old woman who has been part of this family, alongside my husband Mac and his son Kylan, for 17 years. Mac and I both brought our pasts and hopes into this second marriage. My journey before Mac was marred by the heartache of not fitting in with my ex-husband's family, a pain so deep it felt as though I had been discarded. Mac, a companion from my high school days, reached out during this tumultuous period. Although we were little more than acquaintances back then, a chance meeting at a small reunion for close friends changed everything. Learning of my divorce, he offered a hand of friendship and support, sharing his own challenges as a single father raising his 3-year-old son, Kylan. "Our lives aren't over yet. Let's give it our all," he encouraged, words that brought comfort and hope to a bruised heart. It didn't take long for us to recognize the shared pain in each other's stories, drawing us closer. Despite the fear of stepping into a new marriage, I was moved by Mac's kindness and resilience. Choosing to embark on a new journey together, we found love and understanding in a partnership that promised a new beginning. After my first marriage ended, I found love again and made the decision to remarry. Along with this new chapter in my life, I chose to leave my job and dedicate myself to being a full-time homemaker. Despite warnings from friends and family about quitting my job and entering into a new marriage, especially to a man with a young child, I felt confident in my choice. Kylan, my stepson, was only 3 years old at the time, and I believed that spending quality time together and forming a close-knit family unit was of utmost importance. I've always had a deep affection for children, and I was eager to take on the role of raising him, convinced that there wouldn't be any issues in blending our new family. However, I quickly discovered that my optimism was somewhat naive. Kylan showed signs of severe stranger anxiety towards me, refusing to eat or sleep, and bursting into tears at the mere sight of me. I hoped that with time and effort, his anxiety would diminish, and he would begin to see me as his mother. I poured all my energy into caring for him, enduring sleepless nights and striving to engage him during the day, but my attempts to bond seemed futile. Mac, my husband, noticed my struggles and attempted to offer comfort by mentioning how beautiful Kylan's biological mother was, implying that Kylan's rejection might stem from his inability to adjust to my presence. Although Mac meant no harm with his comment, it cut deep, leaving me feeling diminished as a woman, a wife, and a stepmother. To make matters worse, Mac frequently compared me to his ex-wife, either in jest or criticism, which only added to my feelings of inadequacy and isolation. Comments about his ex-wife's cooking or parenting skills, intended to be light-hearted, felt like veiled critiques of my efforts. Before we married, Mac and I faced life's challenges as a team, but once married, I often felt more like a helper than a partner. Despite my best efforts, Kylan remained distant. He stopped crying in my presence, which was a small victory, but he never showed me affection or acknowledged me as a motherly figure. He interacted warmly with Mac, his biological family, and even strangers, leaving me feeling even more isolated within my own home. Thoughts of leaving crossed my mind numerous times during that first challenging year, driven by the lack of connection with Kylan and the strain in my relationship with Mac. Yet, the fear of hearing "I told you so" from those who had cautioned me against this marriage kept me from taking that step. I reminded myself that great achievements take time, hoping that perseverance in my role as a homemaker and stepmother would eventually lead to a breakthrough. Despite my efforts and the passage of time, the warm bond I longed for with Kylan never materialized. He may have grown accustomed to my presence, but the genuine connection and affectionate relationship I had hoped for remained out of reach. Despite his apparent dislike for me, my fondness for Kylan only grew with time. Watching him grow filled me with happiness, even though our relationship faced its challenges. When Kylan began preschool, he hesitantly started to call me Mom. However, my presence at school events seemed to unsettle him deeply, his looks of panic pushing me away. His teachers mentioned he might just be overly attached, yet no effective solutions were presented to ease this tension. While Kylan's growth was a source of joy for me, his continued rejection weighed heavily on my heart. Mac would often dismiss my concerns with a vague "it'll get better," but he never truly addressed the issue. One day, driven by a desire to improve our relationship, I asked Kylan directly what I could do to make him love me. His surprised reaction made me anxious, but I waited for his response, hoping for a breakthrough. Kylan's reply was heartbreaking. He accused me of not loving him, claiming his dad had told him so. According to Kylan, I was the reason his biological mother was no longer around. Shocked and hurt by his words, I felt blindsided. The turmoil between Kylan's mom and Mac had nothing to do with me, yet it seemed Mac had been pinning the blame on me, influencing Kylan's perception of me as a fake mom. That night, I confronted Mac about Kylan calling me a fake mom, questioning how he could have come to such a conclusion without Mac's influence. Mac's bold denial and justification of his actions left me speechless and frustrated. He refused to take responsibility, suggesting I was to blame for Kylan's detachment. This accusation left me at a loss, unable to comprehend why Mac would undermine our relationship in such a manner. Despite my best efforts, my bond with Kylan never strengthened, and my connection with Mac began to feel more distant. Yet, as anyone knows, children grow up regardless of the circumstances around them. It was around the time we were gearing up for Kylan's start at elementary school that a particular incident highlighted the growing gap between us. Mac suggested a premium backpack for Kylan, one with a price tag that made me blink in surprise. "This one's great, right?" he said, pointing it out. The backpack was indeed stylish, but its cost seemed excessive to me. Mac's suggestion that my parents should buy it as a school entry gift left me puzzled. "Your family could easily afford a gift like this for their grandson's school entry," he mentioned casually, as though the idea was the most natural in the world. My confusion must have been evident as I tilted my head, trying to process his suggestion. My family did have a comfortable financial background, owning real estate and with my grandfather having been recognized among the wealthy. Given that Mac knew about my family's status from our high school days, it wasn't shocking he'd suggest this. However, the notion of my grandparents buying Kylan a school backpack felt misplaced, especially since Kylan and I hadn't developed a close relationship, and he hadn't formed any bond with my family due to Mac's insistence that our lack of blood relation meant Kylan and I didn't need to participate in family gatherings. Mac's expectation from my parents to buy an expensive backpack for Kylan, despite their lack of a meaningful connection, struck me as audacious. I responded with a hesitant smile, trying to decline the suggestion gently. However, Mac seemed annoyed, pressing on about why I wouldn't just ask them, adding a tone of challenge that suggested he was testing my family's willingness to support us. I was taken aback by his attitude, but chose not to confront him directly. I had already planned to buy the backpack with my own savings and present it as if it were a gift from my parents. To my surprise, when I mentioned the situation to my parents, they graciously offered to purchase the backpack. In our community, it was common for maternal grandparents to provide such gifts for school entry, although I worried it might seem presumptuous given the complicated family dynamics. My parents' willingness to contribute, despite the awkwardness of the situation, was a comforting gesture. Their support reminded me that, regardless of the challenges with Kylan and Mac, I still had a family willing to stand by me and extend their love in unexpected ways. This act of kindness, however, sparked a reflection on my role as Kylan's stepmother and the complex layers of family relationships that we were navigating. In moments when my world seemed to crumble, my mother was my unwavering support, always there to catch me before I fell. Her presence was a gentle reminder of the strength of our bond. In a simple gesture of gratitude, I sought something modest yet meaningful for Kylan, my child, something that wouldn't weigh heavy on my wallet but would bring joy to his heart. My mother understood, and with a heart full of emotion, I expressed my thanks to her. Not long after, a sleek black backpack arrived, chosen with Kylan in mind. Its simplicity belied its importance. Kylan's eyes lit up with excitement as he wore it for the first time, a smile of satisfaction spreading across his face. However, Mac, Kylan's other parent, was less impressed, criticizing the backpack for its lack of extravagance. Despite the backpack's practicality, lightweight and durable, ideal for Kylan's small frame, Mac dismissed it, desiring something more luxurious. This wasn't the first time Mac's expectations had clashed with mine. When it was time for Kylan to start middle school, Mac pushed for high-end brands for everything from sports bags to shoes, expecting my parents to foot the bill. Influenced by Mac's materialistic values, Kylan began to adopt a mocking tone with me, suggesting my worth was tied to my family's wealth. It was clear Mac had been feeding these ideas to him. I tried to ignore it, focusing instead on my role as Kylan's mother, despite feeling alienated. Mac's materialism stemmed from a desire to exploit my family's wealth, marrying me for financial security and to ensure someone would take care of Kylan. But despite the lack of warmth in our relationship, I remained committed to Kylan's upbringing, refusing to abandon him even if it meant being perceived as the lesser parent. As Kylan grew older and prepared for college, Mac saw another opportunity to press my parents for money, suggesting they cover the college fees. The request was audacious, far beyond the occasional expense for school supplies. Yet, I knew refusing would only invite Mac's scorn. To avoid conflict, I used the money from a previous divorce settlement to cover Kylan's tuition, pretending it was a contribution from my parents. This allowed Kylan to complete his college education and secure a job offer upon graduation. Though our relationship had its challenges, I found solace in knowing I had played a role in his journey to adulthood. As he neared graduation, I felt a mix of relief and sadness, recognizing my limited role in his life was drawing to a close. Despite the absence of a strong bond between us, I had fulfilled my duty as a parent, hoping against hope that it would spare him from future hardships. In the stillness of the night, I found myself waking up and decided to make a quick trip to the bathroom. On my way, the glow from the kitchen caught my eye, hinting at someone's presence. Assuming Kylan had returned from an evening out, I ventured into the kitchen, only to discover Mac was there as well. Hidden in the shadows, I overheard a conversation that would forever change the way I saw my family. Kylan, poised to graduate in a mere 6 months and boasting a job offer, suggested to Mac that they didn't need me anymore, referring to me as useless. Yet, he proposed keeping me around until they could claim their inheritance, eager to get rid of the trash as soon as possible. Mac had been staying in a separate bedroom, and I had not realized until that moment, was also awake. Their words, unintentionally overheard by me, were like a dagger to my heart. Kylan's next words momentarily lifted my spirits. He spoke of celebrating as a family after his graduation, offering to pay for the meal with money from his part-time job. However, my heart sank again when he mentioned inviting his birth mother to the graduation. It had been years since she had been involved in any school event, and now, for one last time, she was invited to celebrate this milestone. This casual conversation about reuniting with his birth mother, who had not been a part of his upbringing or education, made me feel utterly sidelined. Despite my years of dedication raising Kylan since he was 3, I'd always been excluded from school events and milestones. I had hoped to attend his college graduation, only to be told that parents typically don't attend such ceremonies. Yet Kylan had been inviting his birth mother all along. Overhearing Kylan and Mac's conversation revealed a painful truth. They did not see me as family. Mac even expressed gratitude for having a convenient housekeeper around, critiquing the meals I prepared and revealing that Kylan had been selling the lunches I made since middle school. This revelation crushed me, mocking the care and effort I had put into looking after him. Feeling betrayed and heartbroken, I retreated, unable to bear their laughter any longer. For 19 years I had devoted myself to raising Kylan, yet I was never acknowledged as part of the family. That night, as I cried myself to sleep, I made a decision that had been brewing in my heart for a long time. In the following 6 months, I maintained my role without revealing what I had heard. Then, on the day of Kylan's university graduation, he left early in the morning, brimming with excitement but offering no words of gratitude or an invitation to me. In that moment, I realized the depth of my resolve, ready to embrace a new chapter in my life, one where I would finally acknowledge my worth and seek the happiness I deserved. That evening, I found myself in a moment of solitude, having decided to skip dinner. The silence of the room was a stark contrast to the turmoil in my heart, spurred by a conversation I had accidentally overheard. In that conversation, it was clear that Kylan planned to spend the evening with his biological mother and Mac, who also mentioned he wouldn't need dinner. This made me reflect on the lack of recognition and appreciation for my presence in their lives. With nothing but my thoughts, a piece of paper, and a pen for company, I jotted down my feelings. It was barely past 2 p.m., much too early for them to be back. My solitude was interrupted by a phone call from Mac, but I let it go unanswered for a while, sipping my coffee with a smirk, imagining his growing panic. Eventually, out of a mix of pity and curiosity, I answered the call, only to be met with Mac's frantic inquiries about a note I had left. Mac's confusion and concern were palpable, but I remained resolute, hinting at the irreversible step I had taken towards ending our marriage. I had left him divorce papers alongside a note explaining my decision. His immediate reaction was to refuse the divorce, but his concern quickly shifted to the unpaid tuition fees for Kylan's education. This shift in priorities didn't surprise me. It was a stark reminder of where his concerns truly lay. As we spoke, it became evident that Mac was more troubled by the financial implications of our separation than the emotional fallout. He stumbled over his words, trying to negotiate and reason, but I stood firm, cutting through his attempts to sway me. It was clear that he had been blindsided by my actions, unaware of my plans and the depth of my resolve. In the midst of our conversation, Kylan also reached out, his tone brash and entitled, demanding to know why his tuition hadn't been paid. His approach only reinforced my decision to distance myself from their lives. I advised him to seek answers from his father, firmly closing the door on any further involvement with them. This moment marked a turning point for me. After years of being marginalized and treated as little more than a convenient fixture in their lives, I chose to reclaim my dignity and independence. The realization that my role in their lives had been so thoroughly diminished and unappreciated was painful, but it also freed me to pursue a path where I could find self-respect and hopefully, in time, happiness. After unintentionally catching a snippet of their conversation, I was compelled to make a drastic decision, to leave Mac and Kylan and erase my presence from their lives. My phone became a constant reminder of their existence, incessantly ringing, which only fueled my resolve. If they had the time to persistently call, they could just as well manage their financial responsibilities. In a bid for a fresh start, I changed my phone and number the following day. 4 months into my new life, a routine errand at the municipal office revealed a shocking negligence. The divorce papers I had anticipated would be finalized by now hadn't even been submitted. This discovery brought me back to a place I thought I had left behind for good. Despite my reluctance, I found myself standing at the doorstep of what used to be my home, the key turning in the lock as if no time had passed. However, what greeted me inside was a stark testament to time's relentless march, a house abandoned to decay, overwhelmed by the stench of neglect. The living room had transformed into a landscape of forgotten meals and unattended chores, a visual echo of the lives of 2 individuals who had never valued the sanctity of a clean home. It was amidst this chaos that Mac emerged, his appearance as disheveled as the home he stood in. His confession of being fired for embezzling funds, a desperate attempt to cover Kylan's tuition, left me speechless. His attempt to downplay his actions only added to my disbelief. Despite his entreaties for me to return, citing a bizarre justification that my departure was linked to the unpaid tuition, his words fell on deaf ears. Mac's plea, adorned with declarations of love previously unvoiced during our marriage, struck me as a hollow attempt to mend bridges long burned. His inability to understand the gravity of his actions, coupled with a misguided belief in a simplistic resolution to our complex issues, was a clear indicator of the chasm between us. My decision to leave, underscored by the physical and emotional distance I had placed between us, was not a spur-of-the-moment choice, but a necessary step towards self-preservation and seeking a life where respect and dignity were not negotiable. Throughout my life, I often leaned on others for support, but a friend once challenged me to handle my own affairs. We laughed about it, but the humor faded when we noticed a cockroach crawling from a noodle cup in my cluttered room, signaling neglect. This was a metaphor for my life at that time, seemingly destined to be overrun with problems if I didn't change. Years later, after ending my marriage and finding a sense of contentment elsewhere, I was struck by the sad news of my mother's passing. At her funeral, I encountered two people from my past: Mac, my ex, and Kylan, his new partner. Despite the complex web of shared friends, their presence was a surprise, especially considering Kylan's history of ingratitude towards my mother, who had done so much for him. Their motives quickly became clear. They saw my mother's death as an opportunity for inheritance, with Kylan brazenly expecting a share despite our strained relationship. Their audacity and Mac's supportive smirk angered me. I firmly told them that if their intentions were so self-serving, I wished they hadn't come at all. My outburst drew attention, but it was a moment of clarity for me, choosing to stand up for what was right amidst the grief and confusion of loss. In the midst of confusion and whispers, as I approached a gathering with Mac and Kylan by my side, their faces drained of color upon seeing two familiar figures, my ex-husband and our child. I introduced Mac and Kylan to Mackay and Harley, my current family. Mac, flustered, questioned Mackay's presence with a hint of nervousness, recognizing him as the president of the company where he worked. Without waiting for Mac's response, I proudly introduced Mackay as my husband and Harley as our daughter. This revelation caught Mac and Kylan off guard, especially when they realized the connection between their work and my personal life. Mackay, with a firm tone, made it clear he would not tolerate any harm coming to me, blending professional boundaries with personal concern. As the conversation veered towards inheritance, Harley, with maturity beyond her years, addressed Kylan directly, debunking his misplaced expectations about inheritance rights. She made it clear that as the biological daughter, Kylan's claims were unfounded, leaving him visibly embarrassed and diminished. Harley's assertiveness stemmed from her unique position as my biological daughter with Mackay, my first love, and her knowledge of the family dynamics that had long kept us apart. Mackay's family, despite their business success, had forced me to distance myself from Harley, advocating that I forget I had a child, a stance Mackay never supported despite the pressure. This confrontation shed light on the complex relationships and histories intertwining our lives, highlighting the strength and resilience I had found in my journey from being coerced into silence to reuniting with my true family. My journey through love and family complexities began when I caved under the pressure and agreed to a divorce, distancing myself from my first love, Mackay, and our daughter, Harley. Despite his parents' negative opinions about me, Mackay raised Harley with love and care, turning her into a compassionate young woman. Throughout my subsequent marriage to Mac, Harley sent me letters annually, a connection that kept my hope alive, even though we never met in person during those years. She also visited my parents, maintaining a bond with her grandparents that I could only cherish from afar. During my marriage to Mac, I tried to nurture Kylan with love, despite the lack of reciprocation, which made our relationship strained and fueled by obligation more than affection. After the divorce, Mackay reached out to me, having been informed of my situation by my mother. It was then I discovered Mackay had remained single, holding a place for me in his heart even after all these years. With the absence of his disapproving parents and a stable career, Mackay proposed that we reunite, an idea that filled me with a blend of surprise and joy. I shared the news of our potential reunion with Mac and Kylan, revealing Harley's true identity to them. Mac was visibly shocked, likely never having imagined that the woman he had once married was deeply connected to someone of Makai's stature. Harley, with her sharp insight, confronted Kylan, questioning his motives for their past relationship and accusing him of being with me for financial gain. Kylan's reaction, a mix of denial and sorrow, underscored the complexities of our intertwined lives. Harley's confrontation with Kylan revealed deep-seated issues stemming from Mac's influence, highlighting a missed opportunity for a more harmonious relationship among my children. Kylan's upbringing, marred by Mac's values, left him ill-equipped to form genuine connections, contrasting starkly with Harley's upbringing under Makai's loving guidance. This stark difference underscored the tragic reality that the potential for happiness and unity within our blended family had been significantly hindered by past decisions and influences. I found myself nodding in agreement, acknowledging my mistakes in parenting. "I'm really sorry, Harley. You deserve someone far better. Kylan, it's best if you stay away from Harley and her wealth." Following this rejection, witnessed by everyone, Kylan could only offer a stern look in response. Despite his demeanor, I knew he too was entangled in Mac's manipulations. Yet, as an adult, Kylan's path to happiness would remain obstructed until he came to terms with his own missteps and those of his father. "It's time for you to go as well. This home is for family only," Makai declared, effectively showing them the door. His words mirrored the painful exclusion I once felt from Mac and Kylan. Despite his circumstances and the awkward fit at Makai's company, especially after being let go from his previous position due to his age and the circumstances surrounding his departure, Mac continued to work there. It seemed unlikely he'd secure employment elsewhere. Why keep him on board knowing his past with Mac? I questioned Makai. He chuckled in response. I was well aware. Having him here ensures he won't trouble Celia anymore. His explanation brought unexpected comfort, revealing his actions were in my defense. Additionally, I was struck by astonishing news. Kylan had severed ties with Mac, likely a reflection on his previous conduct and his attitude towards me. Following Harley's rejection, Kylan was forced to reevaluate his life. His dreams of securing a hefty inheritance had evaporated, leading him to understand that true happiness demands personal endeavor. While part of me felt Mac got what he deserved, I harbored no ill wishes towards Kylan. Instead, I wished for his growth and eventual happiness, a reflection of my role in his life. Life has since taken a new turn, with me now living alongside Makai and Harley. Our departure caused May and Lars to realize their mistake as they witnessed Makai and Harley's despondency. Yet, their regret came too late to alter the course of events, especially after my remarriage. "Did you ever find happiness?" Makai inquired one day. Reflecting, I acknowledged the moments of joy and shared smiles, but I believed the happiest chapters of my life were still unfolding. With Harley's wedding on the horizon, my wish is to witness our past challenges transform into memories we can one day laugh about, aiming for continuous growth and understanding.